We all know about the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund grants, which say that we have to plant trees in disadvantaged communities, and we thought that was a great opportunity. But relief, when we started talking to people, everybody said it's wonderful to have trees, but we really need jobs. And then the other thing that came up when we were talking about this was the fact that if we're going to plant trees in under-resourced neighborhoods, which is where most of the trees are needed, then how do we have them survive, especially if we're talking about sequestration trees, trees that are supposed to store carbon for a long time. And so for nonprofits in California right now, planting trees that survive in California EPA-defined enviro screen disadvantaged communities is a big deal. And then I happened to be in Washington, D.C. A couple months ago, and I heard Mark Garvin from the Tree Care Industry Association talk about that for the Tree Care Industry Association, finding people to take care of trees, finding tree care workers is a big deal. I'd also heard we had activities going on here in California around that. So to me, this was really, you know, it's like peanut butter sandwiches in a way, things that go beautifully together. So we put together a panel to discuss this, and I want to introduce them really briefly. You can read their full bio, but Bridget Orrick works for the Tree Care Industry Association, and she has a workforce development background from Wisconsin, Nicollet University. Wisconsin, you know, we like to talk about California being really innovative as far as urban forestry. Wisconsin's also a major leader. So she was doing workforce development and had a background in urban forestry before that. She's now living in Denver, trying to set programs up across the country to make sure that we have tree care workers everywhere. She's going to tell you about those programs. Allegra Mautner, who is the tree care manager for Friends of the Urban Forest, is very passionate about what she does. And when we've been talking about diversity and working in diverse communities and also having jobs, Allegra has been opening my eyes to a lot of thoughts about this. We kind of heard it yesterday, is that the idea that we're not going into quote unquote, and we all regret this name in a way, disadvantaged communities to say, here we can help you. We should be going in there with a totally different attitude that says this is a valuable resource and people are resources and this is enriching versus something that we're doing good about. And I'm stumbling over that. Allegra's going to be a lot more eloquent about it. And Oscar used to be with Tree People, and now he works for Tree Care LA. And Oscar talks about the fact that we have people who go out and take care of landscapes and they're cutting trees, but they haven't been trained properly on them, which is not good for the trees and it's not good for the people. It's dangerous. And so his perspective, and he's been working also with setting up programs here in Southern California. So there's a lot going on. Did you see I have this round thing going on here? It's kind of like, you know, the circle of life thing. That's actually a cyclone. I wasn't quite sure, well, we're talking climate change, why not? Throw in a cyclone. So what's going on that makes this really interesting is we got cap and trade funding to plant trees in disadvantaged communities and bring co-benefits such as jobs. That's the number one. The TCIA is setting up sector partnerships, and Peter Sortwell is here. He's also the incoming board president for TCIA. He's was at one of the first meetings for sector partnerships in Oakland at the end of June with Bridget, and it was Merritt College that was blown away by how wonderful it was to have that sector partnership. We also have other tree care programs. So Oscar and his partner Jocelyn, she's in the audience, are going to talk about that. And Andy Trotter, who I told I would call out, he's way in the back. He's hiding in the back. Andy can talk a little bit too. That's part of the interaction part about what he's doing with West Coast Arborists. The Air Resources Board, you know, we also, I think I mentioned it yesterday, the Air Resources Board is involved with GGRF, but they have other programs going on, and they're saying you need to be planting trees in disadvantaged communities. So this is not just a one-horse pony. It's not just GGRF. I think this is permeating a lot of the different policies and grant fundings coming out, so we have to pay attention. And the last thing, and I'm not going to go into much detail about this, but because this is like brand new. You know what SNAP is? It's food stamps. Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, and they have an employment and training program that we just heard about through Desiree Backman, who's also on our board. Cal Relief Board, they have funding to, if somebody is a SNAP recipient, they can get funding for their books, for their child care, for their transportation. And when we're talking to people about how to make sure that we get everybody to the same level playing field, being able to have transportation and childcare, if you're struggling and you're trying to get your community college degree, is a big deal. Merritt College and some of their people were totally excited about this. It's going to take some work. The SNAP people are putting a lot more emphasis on it now than they used to, but it's the way to go. We're probably going to put on a webinar about that a little bit later on because that's still evolving. So to me, it was like, okay, we have trees. We all know that. We have tree planting volunteers. Why would a nonprofit like me get involved in the Tree Care Industry Association? Why would I be interested or talking to other people about jobs? It's because when we're in the community talking to people about how to care for trees, and some communities are saying they need jobs, this is a great opportunity to be able to say, hey, we're teaching you about maybe volunteering to plant trees, but you can also have a career in that. And so the volunteers then could move to tree care jobs, and then it has to come around so it didn't flip upside down. And that also increases tree care literacy in the communities, because if they have a job, they'll be talking to their friends about it, and the community will be cared for and better at the end of it. So, this one is what I briefly went over. It provides basic support, greater emphasis than before. You have to work through the county. But if you're interested, and all of our PowerPoints will be online, so that's why you have this link. If you're interested, you can still talk to the head guy, Brian Solomon at the Western Region for the SNAP Employment and Training Program, and he can help direct you to who you should talk to in the county. And I still love this image. It comes from California Endowment. When I first put it up, I said, hey, you should do all of our marketing for the urban forest people. Because this is really what we're here to do. We're here to take every community and make sure it looks like this community. So now I'm going to introduce Bridget Orrick to take over the stage.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Okay. I think some slides are going to magically appear, and I don't have to do anything to make them come up, which is even better. Thank you. Thanks. Great. So, again, my name is Bridget Orrick. I'm a Workforce Development Director for the Tree Care Industry Association. I'm not very good at being tied behind a podium. I think it comes from years of getting beaten up in the classroom. For those of you that teach, you probably understand what I'm talking about specifically. So the Tree Care Industry Association is a trade association. We represent businesses like Arborwell, one of our sponsors. Please thank Peter for sponsoring this event today. And many other organizations throughout the United States. We are a national trade association. We do have a couple of businesses that are in Canada, but for the most part, we focus on things that happen here in the United States. So let me see if I can explain a little bit about employers in our industry. So the businesses that are members of our organization, for the most part, are residential and commercial tree care companies and utility line maintenance corporations. But these are not the only businesses that hire arborists, that pay people a family-sustaining, year-round wage for caring for trees. We can also look to municipalities and other nonprofit organizations. So about a year ago, a conversation was being held by our board of directors, and they began talking about the long-term struggle that occurs to find qualified people to come into the workforce for the tree care industry. And it's not been just a few years of an issue. It didn't start during the recession. It can be documented back in some of the newsletters of our member businesses back into the 1950s. So we know that this issue has existed for a long time. It's just that there hasn't been a voice behind it. So that's part of what my job is as a workforce development director, is to give voice to the occupational field of arboriculture and urban forestry, and also start making some strategic efforts to change that, that problem that exists for employers today. So these are the different organizations that hire arborists. And every year, our organization conducts a survey of our members. Now, we have 2,200 member businesses. So those businesses have many employees that work for them, and many of them are located with multiple branches across the U.S. This is our wage data. This is information that we have about our businesses. So out of 2,200 businesses, we had 437 respondents, which is, a fairly representative population of our employers. And we can't actually ask them what this year's wages are, because as a trade association, that would be like cost fixing or something like that. So we can't, the government doesn't let us do that, but we can ask what people were paid the year before. So this is the 2015 survey data, and it shows some of the different jobs that exist within the tree care industry. And I have a couple other categories over here, which I'll explain in a minute. But it shows the different wage progressions. Now, this is national wage data. So we took the data from all across the US and just lumped it all together and said, what are the average wages, both high and low, for individuals that come into the businesses. So on the left side, you'll see there are entry-level positions. Everyone starts out as a ground operations worker. And the reason for that is they need to have some team skills and some basic skills in working with trees. And from there, they may become a plant healthcare technician, a tree climber, an aerial lift operator, and then over a season of experience and time, they might become a foreman. And after that, I have a big line that goes right across the top of the screen, because the skills that were required for an individual to get hired by our businesses are not the same skills that are required for management and supervision in an organization or sales. So there's some intrinsic issues that exist for us being able to develop a pipeline of workers into this industry. Some of it is wage related. Some of it is just being able to communicate what the pathway looks like. But the biggest problem is a lack of access to training and education in the United States. There are not many arboriculture and urban forestry programs, and the ones that do exist might be at a university level. They're not really where, university graduates, let's just face it, they are not going to come and do this, right? They think this work is beneath them. But this is where they have to start to be in this industry, right? So how do we accelerate that pathway? And how do we speak to a different audience of students? If today's high school graduates are leaving and only 30 to 40% of them are going straight to university, and only 30 to 40% of those individuals actually finish with a bachelor's degree, we're missing a big population in the United States, a big group of people that are not going to fit in to a baccalaureate completion plan. We're missing a big population of people. So I lost my clicker here. So when we started our workforce development initiative, we started looking at some pipeline dynamics. We know what the university plan is, but what are some other options that exist in either workforce training, apprenticeship, associate degree programs, stackable credentials? What are some other things that we can do to attract workers into this industry? So we began looking at an awareness campaign. So we just recently hired a marketing firm to change our image, to make the jobs known, help explain what the career path looks like, and to help us diversify the workforce. You see, in every city that I'm working in today, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts to Oakland, California, we can access wage data that suggests 85% of the workforce identifies themselves as Caucasian and male. So we're kind of missing out on like half of the workforce female and people of color. So how do we attract those individuals into this industry, in this occupational field? Another thing that we're working on is increasing accessibility to education and training programs. I'm going to show you the workforce sector partnership model that I've learned about and that I'm implementing for this industry. And then how do we leverage resources by creating those partnerships between employers, workforce development, education institutions, and other nonprofits? How can we work together to identify jobs and skills that are required, give people training, and then build the pipeline to help those people get to employment? So this is the sector partnership model. This model has existed for about 20 years. And in more progressive states, there are assistance programs that can help businesses partner with education and leverage those relationships. So in 6 cities right now, Oakland, California being one of them, we've moved through the first phase of establishing the sector partnerships. So it's employers, workforce development entities, local community and technical college, and other nonprofits that might be able to help us. In places like Atlanta, Georgia, United Way has been a wonderful partner for us. They're helping us access the Urban Conservation Corps and youth between the ages of 18 and 24. So we just identify who are the good partners, let's all get together in a room, and let's do a little mini strategic plan to figure out how we can solve this problem. So then we build some strategies. So this is, in 6 of the cities that I'm working in right now, this is where we're spending our work. Because the employers don't all want the same thing. Sometimes they want an associate degree program. Well, if you build that, how are you going to get students enrolled in it? How do you create a pipeline to enter into that program? So it has to be a multifaceted approach. Maybe we're looking at apprenticeship in places like Baltimore, and in Atlanta we're looking at a registered U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship program as being a good vehicle to get us there. And in other places we're looking at short-term training. How can we partner with an organization to offer a 6 to 8 week training program where we can get some additional funding assistance to help people get employed? So it just depends on what those employers want to do and how they can leverage other resources. Then finally, we'll move into the phase of implementation, and I anticipate that in those 6 communities where we're working, we're going to see programs develop and things actually start to get delivered in fall of 2017. So you may be wondering why we're talking about this here. Well, Los Angeles is a city where our employers are hurting. They are really having a hard time finding people. So that being said, how do we begin to work within this community? How do we begin working here? So I'm gonna pass the mic on because I think I'm probably over my time, aren't I? No, I'm not? Oh, I'm good.
I think
okay.
Right about.
I'm gonna pass the mic on, and I'd like to just open the floor up and invite you to a conversation. If you feel like your organization or some of the work that you're doing might be a good partner with a workforce development initiative, I would really like to have a conversation with you and give you my business card, because we're going to probably start our work in LA here in the spring. So thank you.
Hi guys.
Hello.
So we'll give it just a second. So I just kind of wanted to, well, I'm Allegra Mautner. I'm with Friends of the Urban Forest. I'm the tree care manager there. And I'm just going to be talking to you guys about how to increase diversity in the workforce. Bridget touched on it for just a second, that how do we actually make that happen? So I'm going to give you guys some tools to maybe make that happen, figure out why we want diversity. Because we do, we really want it. So I'm going to start off with just a story from our organization at Friends of the Urban Forest. So recently, our education coordinator was interested in reaching the large Latino community in San Francisco because we don't have a whole lot of members or volunteers from our Latino community. So what he did was he reached out to an organization that exists in San Francisco called Poder, which is an organization that fights for environmental justice for Latino immigrants and other communities of color within San Francisco. Luckily for us, they have a really huge membership, so lots of volunteers. And then they also have a really sweet side project called Bicis del Pueblo. They were really excited about working with us. They wanted to plant trees and have kind of a new experience for their members. And while all we were looking for in this relationship was to kind of interface with that community that we normally don't interface with, this new partnership created an opportunity where Bicis del Pueblo helped us do our very first bicycle planting at Friends of the Urban Forest. So you can see there that we've got, the trees going out on bikes, and a lot of volunteers showed up. Our volunteers had a new experience that they hadn't had before before, which was the bicycle planting, and it turns out we planted trees a lot more efficiently by bike than on foot. So it was a really great experience, and it's just a really good demonstration of how bringing in new communities, diverse communities and diverse workforces can really improve systems and programs. By working with this Latino community, we've increased innovation in this particular instance. We increased productivity, and many studies really mirror those things that we found. So lots of studies show that diverse workforces have increased productivity, have increased innovation and efficiencies, and come up with more creative solutions to problems than workforces that are predominantly one population. So then I want to go on to kind of what is diversity, right? Because we're talking about we want diversity, it increases innovation, and not only that, I skipped on a little bit, but let me go back to another reason that we want diversity is that it's actually really important for our industry. We talked a little bit about it yesterday in how important not only politically getting governments and government officials to listen to their constituents, so harnessing larger swaths of the population in order to get our message across of increasing urban forests and creating a better urban forest into the future. But it's also important to bring in diverse communities because they represent a very large buying power in California. Minorities, people of color in California actually represent the majority of people in California. So harnessing this power, both politically and on the consumer side, is really important for the future of urban forestry for us. So what is diversity? A lot of people think right off the bat that diversity means ethnic or racial diversity. And even though that's very easy to determine through a simple checkbox on an application, it's not necessarily the only thing that's contributing to people's experience and their ability to respond to situations. So, for example, my mom is Mexican and my dad is Jewish, and while those things contributed to my experience, it was probably more likely that watching my mom work as a nurse and have 12-hour nursing shifts and then go and volunteer at the beach area community clinic where I grew up was what influenced me to fight for those who have been disenfranchised, and probably also more likely the compost bin that we had growing up in the backyard and the can crusher that diverted a lot of our waste while I was growing up that influenced my environmentally conscious career path. And so these things are kind of what brought me here in front of you today, but I can't check that on a box on a resume or write it on my resume, and it's very difficult to determine necessarily through an interview. And I will say that racial and ethnic diversity currently do represent a diversity of experiences because race and ethnicity are a very high predictor of socioeconomic class and also geographic location. So currently it is appropriate to use those characteristics when determining diversity of an organization or workforce. So how do we get it? We all know that it's great now, and we all understand kind of what diversity is, why we want it, but how do we actually make that happen? How do we implement it in our workforces? The first step along the process, I hear a lot from people that there aren't enough qualified applicants from different communities. And studies show, not only do I think that's not true, but studies actually show that isn't true. There are plenty of qualified applicants out there. It's just in terms of trying to really advertise to those communities and really getting them in the door and making the interview process more available for them. So in terms of advertising, it may be that the current way that you're advertising for your positions are only advertising to the current circles that you work in, right? So we heard from Melissa yesterday to post your jobs to California Relief. And while that's super important and you're gonna get a lot of qualified applicants, those are going to be only the people who are already in the urban forest community, right? So those are going to be people who are predominantly, at least in our current organization, predominantly white. And so we're not going to get as much of a diverse applicant pool from that. So it may be super important to post in new spaces, work with existing organizations who interface with those populations to circulate those job announcements. And making those announcements accessible, because it's not simply enough to just pass them out to more people. Make sure that the wording in your announcements addresses the fact that you're looking for a diverse workforce, and I mentioned it briefly yesterday, not just a tagline at the bottom that says, we accept everyone of different races and genders and sexual orientation, but actually putting it in the language. So this particular flyer I had here, I created this because we wanted more local applicants and a diversity of applicants for our internship program. So I created a paper flyer where we had originally only been posting on Idealist, Craigslist, other online forums that are specific to our industry. And now I circulated this to our community colleges within San Francisco, libraries. Other places that you can circulate things are local organizations, churches, maybe local gardening stores or hardware stores, posting there. But this particular flyer I actually updated recently for our fall program because I realized that in the body of the description I didn't talk anything about diversity. So in there I put that we're looking for a diversity of applicants and really trying to make it very clear that we're accepting everyone and we value new applicants and diverse applicants. So that's a really important thing, is just advertising in itself. So now we get the new applicants in the door. So what do we do at the interview level? Okay, this is super important. This is crucial to getting more people, because if you just have them in the interview process, there are so many systems in place that have been set up to subvert their success at an interview process that it may not be enough just to get them in the door. So there's a couple steps that you can take in terms of the interview process that can help us get rid of those innate biases that are in all of us when we talk to interviewees, and really try and make it a fair playing field from the outset. So one of the things that we can do is to create a diverse interview panel, right? It's going to be a lot easier to feel comfortable in an interview as someone who it seems outside the ordinary of the organization if there's someone else who's kind of in that boat on the interview panel. So maybe asking a local organization to just have a representative with you there to kind of go through those interview questions with the new applicant, or just finding other people in your field from another organization if you don't have a diversity of people already within your organization. The second thing is creating a specific set of questions to follow when you're doing these interviews. So open interview questions, open style kind of conversation really lets in a lot of those innate biases and advantages to people who are most like us. If I'm used to communicating with someone like myself or like you, then it's not going to create as much of a diversity in our it's going to be really easy for us to communicate and get across those qualifications that you have, but it's not necessarily going to create new programs and really innovate our organization. So really specific questions and sticking to them, really trying to stick to them throughout the process. It may seem boring, but it really helps to create a strong foothold for those candidates. And then along with that, creating rubrics for those questions, creating point systems where we say, this is the sort of answer we're looking for. That way, we don't get caught up with how someone answered a question or how they communicated it to us, but actually the information that they got across, and putting point systems, point values on those answers so that we can understand that this person is qualified even if we're not really used to the style in which they're presenting that information. And then lastly, this one's really strange and out there, and maybe no one's heard this one before, but really not talking about the interviewees until all candidates have been interviewed. And this is really important because it can really corroborate those innate biases that we have to talk about candidates just following the interview. So it might push up those people that we're really used to communicating with, and we're used to hearing those answers from, and all of a sudden you're saying, oh yeah, that was really great. This interview subject, I really liked how they answered this question, and they seem like they'd really fit in with our office culture, and like all these things that we really talk about a lot, at least in the nonprofit world, and something that, even though it's really great for making friends and really easy to make friends that way, it's maybe not the best way to get new people and new ideas into your program. And then it might also detract from people that we're not used to communicating with, the answers that we're not used to hearing, because you might say, oh, I really liked this candidate, but the way that they answered that question was just a little bit off. So now all of a sudden you've told your coworker, oh wait, why don't we question this new person who came in, and you're kind of bringing that down. So it's really important, don't talk about the interviewees until after you've interviewed all of the candidates. Okay, so, and then lastly, think about your personal and professional network. Is it diverse? Are there a diversity of people out there? And for most of us, that's going to be no. That's just what the common reality of what our personal and professional networks are at this day and age. So try and change that. Just find one person who you've been meaning to go have lunch with, you've been meaning to go ask about their personal experience. It doesn't have to be specifically about diversity. It can just be, where did you grow up? What did you do? What do you do for fun after work? Just experience working with people from a diversity of backgrounds, and it'll help you understand their position a lot better going forward. How am I on time? Okay. So how do we sustain it? So this is super important. Once we get that new diverse applicant, we got our new diverse workforce, okay, now we're done. No. We have to keep it going. We have to keep those relationships going, work with those organizations who helped us bring those candidates into the door, and actually create a system that is really supportive of those new diverse applicants, because it's going to be a new, strange world if, and it's kind of scary. And this goes along for any of your employees. We should be doing regular check-ins, asking, how are we doing on our side as an employer to help you attain your goals, and how are they doing to help us attain our goals? It should be a back and forth. As Cindy was saying, our employees are a resource, and we should really respect that. We should respect the fact that they bring in new things for our organization, and figure out, we're not just training them. They're helping our organization, and they're a resource to us. So have those regular check-ins. If you can, work with existing organizations to kind of streamline that process. So a really good example is our Arborist Apprentice program at Friends of the Urban Forest. We were having a little bit of difficulties this last year. We were feeling like we weren't getting across to them. The Arborist Apprentice program is a program at Friends of the Urban Forest where we get candidates from the Wraparound Project who work with youth who have been violently injured in gang-related incidents, and they meet them at the bedside and really try and kind of turn their life around, give them resources to get them jobs. And so we take them on as interns, train them up, and we were feeling kind of lost, like we weren't really giving them anything other than just a temporary job to, put on their long list of temporary jobs, a couple of bucks just to keep them along for another couple of months. We felt like we weren't really training them, we weren't helping them out. So what we did was we decided to have their case managers come into our office and talk to our employees and see how can we interface these issues that we can have, or that we were having. And it turns out that we were actually doing a lot of things right. And the candidates were actually getting a lot out of this relationship. They were learning lots of things in terms of professional conduct and how to interface with the community, things that we felt were very basic skills, but something that was very useful for this population. So it sounds like I'm out of time, but these are just a couple of tools that you guys can use to kind of increase the diversity in your workforce. And I have a couple more slides just going over the things that we talked about, and then a couple of links if you guys want to do more for, check out more and research the topic. So. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hello. My name is Oscar Sanchez, and I work with a small tree care company in Los Angeles called Tree Care LA. And I did work with Andy Lipkis a long, long time ago, and planting trees all over the city and taking care of them as well. And so my presentation is called Power to the Trees. Bicycles are also important. So the right tree in the right place, right? We all know that. And I guess I have the, I was going to say, can you click? So due to the recent drought that's actually been going on for a long, long time and continues, and we don't see an end to it, the city has helped people get like gardens that are using very little water. So you remove all your grass and you get a load of mulch and some succulents and plants and native plants, and it's looking really great. But sometimes there's a side effect to that, and that's like some of the gardeners are losing their jobs. And so it's kind of important to think about how our efforts to be sustainable are affecting the jobs that are out there. So let me see. This is obviously bad tree work. Topping is bad. A lot of gardeners are asked to do things that they're not qualified to do by the homeowner, and they end up topping trees. Sometimes they do it on their own, or the homeowner asks them to do it, but they lack training on how to do it properly, not how to prune properly, not how to top it properly. But also, they also work in very dangerous conditions where they are not roped in or using a ladder. Sometimes people do the job, they prune the tree, but they forget to remove the U-lock that's on it. And this is on Santa Monica, a street tree. You can imagine somebody took that off, right? It's no longer there. And somebody tied a rope and forgot about it. That's me. I removed it and showed a gap. So people are doing some things or skipping some things that they should do because of lack of training. Here there is really down the street from where I live. I took all these pictures, by the way, and you can use them if you want to. But there's a guy with a ladder. He's lanyarded in. He doesn't have a helmet, but he has ear protection. And there is one guy at the bottom making sure nobody comes around and gets hit, but he's looking up instead of around. So this could easily become a serious incident. There's a link, if you click on the picture, and you can see why topping is bad. And we see it all over the city. On Santa Monica and Beverly Glen, I just noticed a big billboard sign. All the trees in front of it had been topped. Those are our trees. There's a lot of work that went into that. Planting the tree, watering it, these are mature trees, they belong to us, and somebody decided that they were in the way of their marketing campaign, and they believed that the trees were not as important as them advertising for a certain watch I won't mention. So dangerous, right? The tree is actually tied up to the roof of the house. So it's gonna go that way. The bottom, as you can tell, is rotted. This should have been a job done differently. I went back and checked, and luckily nobody got hurt. I didn't see any blood stains or anything like that. The power of trees, right? They could be harmful if not worked with properly. So I've been tired of like looking at all these trees along the streets and who do I talk to. I pulled over actually on my bike, so I didn't have to pull over that much. So on my bike I stopped and I talked to the guy and told him, why are you spiking that tree and topping it? And he told me to go to hell pretty much. What do I do? Report it to the police as vandalism? Or what are they gonna do? Are they really gonna give them a ticket? I doubt it, right? So in one case, I actually talked to the guy, and he's like, yeah, we got a permit from the owner of the building. So anyhow, so I've been working on a few things. I worked at Los Angeles City College teaching arboriculture in Spanish and English. Once in a while, I do that, and I found that teaching in English was attracting a lot of homeowners that wanted to know how to hire a good arborist for their homes. And teaching it in Spanish was more students were there because they wanted to learn so they could get a job and educate themselves and see if that's a career path they would like to take. And then I'm with the Western Chapter ISA Spanish Education Committee, working to, I just got an email asking maybe if I could write an article for them in Spanish. There are a lot of arborists out there that don't speak English and need the education to be available to them. And the ISA, I'm very happy, is very open to opening up those channels and translating a lot of that literature. I think they just, there's a Portuguese version of the Certified Arborist exam book. So people in Brazil can read this, you know, and really become an international society of arboriculture that way, instead of just speaking in English. The whole world has many languages, and everyone needs to be educated and have that opportunity. So I've also been working on developing, I developed the Arborist Apprenticeship Curriculum for Certified Tree Workers, Climber Specialists. That's a long title. And this is a one-year apprenticeship program for people that want to become arborists. There's a lot of jobs where they make you pick up branches and go chip them, and then you kind of don't move from there because there's the climber, and until that climber retires, then you get to go up the tree and climb up that ladder. But this is supposed to be something that can accelerate that program and get them to earn a better wage. There's a great need to have trained arborists that do the right job in our city. Mm-hmm. We have a big investment that we've made over the years, from planting the small trees, growing them in nurseries, taking care of them, and then to have somebody just come and in a matter of hours just butcher a tree and totally destroy it. And you've seen that before. So it's really important that we do something about it, right? These are some things that I'm doing. That's my drawing. You could use it as well if you want to. So what can you do? What can I do? We could promote arboriculture as a career at events like Career Day, for example. If you go to a career day at a university, you see a lot of military, you see a lot of police, and then you see some other careers that people can have. Now, with education in high school, a lot of programs have been taken out, like woodshop, for example, and metalwork. Some students are not inclined to do a lot of math and science and things like that, and they're more attracted to being outside and working with their hands. And these are the students that are forgotten, and then they end up not knowing what to do in the future. Going to a career day as a certified arborist, as a person who owns a business in arboriculture, and promoting the job to the students and that opportunity that they can have in the future, just opening up those eyes to that is very important. Also at Earth Day events, I've gone to Ask an Arborist. I have a little table, and all these elementary school students come over and say, hey, why does my tree lose its leaves, you know? And very important, that's like Greg McPherson is studying that, you know? How do they do that? Let's find out. Those are really good questions that sometimes we don't ask, we just ignore, right? And tree plantings. If you work with a nonprofit and you're planting trees at the beginning, you have like a little meeting, get together, and that's a time that you could say, hey, in the future, if you want to be a tree climber, a lot of kids want to climb trees. You all remember climbing a tree at one point, right? So you could tell them, hey, this is a great career that you could have in the future if you would like that. Just for fun also. It's fun to climb just recreationally. Thank you very much. And I do have some flyers for the apprenticeship program, and they're right over here, and some business cards.
Thank you very, very much for this different view of jobs and all the different aspects. We are running a little short on time, so because Oscar was talking about the apprenticeship program, I did want, Andy, I want you to come talk a little bit about what you're doing, just to give us another viewpoint. And the microphone right there should be perfect.
Sure. Andy Trotter. I'm responsible for the field operations for West Coast Arborists, and we trim trees throughout California and have a lot of employees doing the work. Just one thought to start, shout out for the TCIA. Their training programs we use constantly within our program. You know, we're always trying to hire all levels of people, from the ground workers to the trimmers to the people that have, you know, management skills and things like that. And I was interested to see the Y in the road between the labor force and the management force, because there's a big bridge to cover there that we're still struggling with. But the pathway through the labor level, starting with entry level and using the tools that TCIA provides, teaching, you know, the basic job skills, are amazing. And thank you for providing those products. We use them every day. Anybody can use them. They provide curriculums on how to do the job, from how to be a crew leader and manage my crew and the different personalities of somebody, you know, that's working for me, to electrical hazard awareness or the basic safety standards that help us conform with our ANSI standards to keep our workers safe. So those are amazing tools. When we hire employees, we will always take entry level. Entry level has a couple basic components that are really critical, and I've done a lot of work trying to work with CCC groups and some of these programs to get at-risk youth into the labor force. And my biggest challenges there have been reliability. And it's great that they have parallel curriculums trying to give job experiences, and then they're also trying to teach some basic skills like, you know, high school graduation, diplomacy, and things like that. But what ends up happening to me is that at 2 or 3 o'clock, when the heavy work of the day for the ground worker is there, they say, we got to go now because we got to go to class. And so that becomes a real hard thing for a person in business to coordinate with. What we've come back to is a lot of internal training. And when we hire employees that start at entry level or wherever on the progress, we let them know what the path of opportunity is and what the growth opportunities are. There's these different job titles that you can be promoted through, and there's key achievements that are little bits that you can do that'll help contribute to you advancing up the chain. And those are you know, tied together with wage, you know, increases and steps and opportunities, and so that's huge. Another big thing that's happened in California, especially in the last year here, is the wage scales throughout the country are not typical of California anymore in the public sector. And this is something that it's an opportunity, I feel, to self-promote our industry, because our entry-level ground workers now are closer to the $20 number, and the wages are going up from there. So the Department of Industrial Regulations in California finally came out with a determination for a wage scale for tree workers in California about a little over a year ago. And our company, as part of you know, working together with that, has actually become unionized with the laborers union. And so now the employees are starting kind of at some of those numbers that were put up on the board, but on top of that, another $5, $6, $7 an hour in benefits, medical for their whole families, or pensions, and you know, things like that. So that's an opportunity that I hope helps us a whole lot and attracts more people into the industry. And all of us, you know, the idea of hiring local to wherever we're at, that's the key. If we can hire at that entry level, teach those people the job skills, they're going to stay as real loyal employees. That's what we found when you train them yourself and you provide them those advancement opportunities. It's still not a perfect world out there. There's a roller coaster based on some very expensive places to live, like the Bay Area. It's real tough to get people into our business. Thank you.
Thank you. We are running late. Who has a burning and are there any burning questions before we go on? I'm going to ask her burning questions at this point because I know you guys want lunch. The last person I want to say something is Jocelyn. Why don't you come? I think you can use this mic right there at the end. Is that one live, Cass?
Hello.
Hi. Hello?
Okay. My name is Jocelyn. I'm Oscar's partner. I got drawn into trees through him, listening to him every day, coming home and telling me about the different trees he climbs and learning a lot from him about how the industry works. And I separately on my own have a company that does workforce training, and I learned over the last year or so about some federal funding for workforce training and started to go after that for other industries, and it became clear that it might be useful for the tree care industry. So we started to work together to we built this curriculum. We've worked through the Western chapter in an ad hoc committee on education. Quite a few people involved from CAL FIRE, from Urban Relief in Oakland, from a number of the tree care companies have been on that committee, and it went from an ad hoc committee now to a committee that we'd like to spread throughout the industry and nonprofits to be involved with developing apprenticeships in California for climbing arborists. So we've also been talking with Bridget, and hopefully those efforts and the efforts of Urban Relief, who they've already gotten some things going, and they have some grants they've secured, and we've secured some grants. Hopefully we'll be able to bring all that together. And even if we're not doing exactly the same thing, we'll stack, you know, somebody will have the very short-term programs, and somebody will have the little bit longer programs, and somebody will have the community college programs. And we'll put that all together and give people the option to come in at whatever level they're ready for and interested in.
Well, thank you. And so we're telling you about this before this is completely finished, because if you want to be involved in it, now's the time, right? And Bridget's, the first one she was talking about was a year-long program. Excuse me, not Bridget. Jocelyn was a year-long program. Bridget's talking a 3-year program. That's what was developed in Wisconsin and could be transferable here.